And welcome to the May 16th monthly presentation of the Institute for Historical Study. This month we are pleased to have Katya Miller talking about the statue on top of the U.S. Capitol. Katya is an art historian, metalsmith, and a filmmaker with degrees from the University of California. She's a fellow of the United States Capitol Historical Society and has done over 2 decades of research at the Library of Congress and the architect of the Capitol Curator's Office. And she will be talking today about the lady on top of the dome, how she got that way, and what it all signifies. So without further ado, Katya, the floor is yours.
Wow. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you for attending my presentation about the lady on the dome. Here, I have a new card. America's most visible yet invisible monument. And I hope to have a book out this summer that Rosemary has been helping with. Thank you. I'm especially happy to present to this group because I found a home with other historians and a lot of support in writing this, especially the writers group that read my first chapters and gave me some good critique that I could follow up and make it better and better. And I think it's pretty good right now. And also, I found Rosemary in the writers group. So that was really wonderful. I'm going to present both my research and the process of researching and who I met along the way, the places I went in Washington, D.C. and upstate New York, because the statue's prominent feature is the eagle feathered headpiece. And I thought I should really meet the people, native people, who honor the eagle as an icon and could help me understand a deeper meaning for the statue with the eagle on top. So in 1995, I was introduced to an Iroquois clansmother, and I traveled up to meet her in upstate New York. And then later I found a Mohawk artist who contributed to my understanding about the statue and the eagle. And I went up to visit another clan mother later on. And I gave that a talk about the native leaders I met, which is on the website and the YouTube channel for this institute. And it has great presentations, so I would encourage everyone to subscribe to the channel and like all of the wonderful presentations because our histories matter. So being an art historian, I started this journey with images only. And I would go to the curators and historians and show them images, but I didn't know how to write it into a history. So it took me 30 years to figure out how to understand history and write history because I was a metalsmith. I am a metalsmith. So let's get started with the share. So many of you in this group know about my project. You've known about it for years, but let me just ask you if you knew that there was a statue on the Capitol dome before you knew of my project. Now I can't see you. I can't see them. Anyway, okay, let's forget that. What are you all on mute?
Yes, as we supposed to be.
Yeah, so you can't tell me. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I can answer myself. Yeah, I remember as a kid going to the Capitol and seeing way up there was a statue. Yep.
Okay. Well, most people don't know that there is a statue. So I like to ask. So this statue was put up in the middle of the Civil War on December 2nd, 1863. She is 19 and a half feet tall. She's 288 feet above the ground, and she weighs 15,000 pounds. And her base reads, "E pluribus unum," our first national motto. Okay, next. My research took me to the U.S. Capitol Curator's Office, where I met with historians, curators, and archivists over a 20-year period. I'm going to play this short video of Bill Allen speaking. Bill Allen wrote a huge book called The History of the United States Capitol, considered the Bible of the Capitol.
What's frightful to me in your mind's eye? Well, she is this beautiful woman who has some Native American features, has been capped by this beautiful headdress, as a reminder that this is a country that's different because it was built first and foremost around the issue of freedom.
Nice. I first became aware of the Statue of Freedom in 1992 when a friend gave me a page from the book Indian Givers: How the Indians of the Americas Transformed the World by Jack Weatherford, who was walking across the lawn with a woman one day who asked him, "Who is the Indian woman on the top of the dome?" And he saw the figure as an Indian woman, even though he knew she was not. Now, a few months later, in my meditation, the statue appeared to me saying, "I'm so honored to be on top of the Capitol dome, but so unseen," a vision that has stuck with me ever since. So this image is from 1993, when the Statue of Freedom was lifted by helicopter from the dome for cleaning and restoration. This workman was photographed kissing her cheek, a photo which was on the front page of the San Francisco Chronicle and other papers around the country. And that was the first time I saw her, because it's really hard to find images of her. It was in 93, and it's still a little hard. So in 2000, I traveled to meet this artist, John Fadden, at the Six Nations Indian Museum in the Adirondack Mountains, who drew and painted numerous meetings between the founding fathers and the Iroquois chiefs. This one is a meeting in the mid-1750s between Oneida Chief Shenandoah and Ben Franklin for the purposes of peace, friendship, and trade. The colonists learned about the Iroquois ideals of individual freedom and liberty embedded in the great law of peace, represented by this peace tree with an eagle hovering on top. And then Ben Franklin's holding the Liberty Tree flag, which most likely was influenced by their peace tree. This, I'm going through some Revolutionary War images here. This bronze sculpture is called Allies in War, Partners in Peace, and it's at the Museum of the American Indian, which is a block from the Capitol. It's Chief Shenandoah, George Washington, and Polly Cooper standing around the peace tree with an eagle on the pinnacle. In the winter of 1777 and 8, Washington sent word to Chief Shenandoah for help with food provisions for his starving soldiers. He arrived with a group of Oneidas, including a woman named Polly Cooper, who taught them how to survive on native foods, especially the corn and berries. The event was finally acknowledged this year, 2026, by the U.S. Mint issuing a copper $1 coin from the Native American series, recognizing the contributions of both Sacagawea on one side and Polly Cooper on the other side. It depicts Polly Cooper offering corn to General George Washington at Valley Forge. Let's see, here we go. I'm going to skip this one there. Revolutionary War prints functioned as the era's social media, cheap, fast, emotionally charged, and impossible to ignore. By the time the revolution began, and at the center of many pictures was the Indian princess as America, her feet planted on American soil, her bow drawn, her feathered headdress rising above the fray. The female combatants, as this one is called, it was from 1776. And it's an engraving with Britannia, the mother, pitted against her daughter America, the Indian princess. Britannia shouts, "I'll force you into obedience, you rebellious slut." And America replies, "Liberty, liberty forever, mother, while I exist." So these are images I took at the Capitol, which I visited from 1995 through the fellowship period of 2012 and 13, where I met with curator Lannon, who brought me folders and documents related to the statue. When I first visited the Capitol, anyone could walk into the building and go anywhere, see Congress people in the halls, and admire the frescoes on the walls and ceilings, walk on the mosaic floors and see many bronze and marble statues along the way. And later, we needed to enter through airport-like security. So that was pretty sad. In the curator's basement office, I found a black and white line drawing from 1859 labeled "America, Apex of the Dome." It was a preliminary drawing for Harper's Weekly, a journal of civilization, seen on the right here. I think it's your right, which features the statue throughout the 1860s. She was on the cover of many of those journals. And freedom is flanked by two muses of history, holding large scrolls in their laps, recording the evolving nation's story. This began my understanding of the word America as a woman to represent our country. I began to see the use of America on frescoes at the Capitol. Constantino Brumidi was considered the Michelangelo of the Capitol. In his early work in the House Appropriations Committee room is this medallion of George Washington, flanked by Liberty on the left, wearing a laurel wreath and holding an American flag, and on the right, America as a native princess, or America, with feathered headdress carrying a bow and arrows. These symbols blend both European and Native American iconography, which is reflected in the Statue of Freedom. This 1865 Brumidi fresco is a blending of Euro-American and Native imagery, and shows she's surrounded by East Coast flora and fauna, a sea creature. She has a shell necklace on, bows and arrows, and you can see it's labeled America underneath. I kept seeing these images that were labeled America, and I had to kind of figure out what it meant. This is Brumidi's masterpiece, The Apotheosis of Washington. You can see on the left the big view when you look up into the dome at the Capitol. rotunda. And then above that rotunda, of course, is the Statue of Freedom on top of the dome. On the right is War, which is a young version of the statue, a youthful armed freedom with an eagle by her side chasing tyranny while her enemies flee from her. Brumidi in 1865 was so displeased with Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy, that he got revenge by painting Davis as Discord, a hooded creature carrying torches. I was thrilled to spend time in the largest library in the world, the Library of Congress. And I asked one of the guides how much of their, that collection is digitized. At the time, in 2012, it was like 5%. And I'm sure it's more, but probably there's a lot that is not digitized. I spent time in the prints and photograph division, the manuscript division, and the mapping and geography division. And on the right, I took this picture of my office, which was the reading room. It was just magnificent to be there. So I went into the mapping and geography division and met, I told them what I was looking for. The personifications of the continents. And they sat me down at a desk to look at all these books, but then they went and got the head of the department. This is Ralph Ehrenberg. And he asked me about my research, and then he took me into the temperature-controlled rooms and showed me 16th century atlases of North America. And here's a short video I took of him showing me. It's 1570. And this one was
1664, I think.
Yeah.
Which is
The
closer, right?
yeah. Anyway, it gives you a feeling for being there and speaking with the head of the department, which was pretty thrilling.
Incidentally, that's BLAEU, the atlas.
Oh, did I spell it wrong?
Yeah, just in
Okay.
case anyone wants to look it up.
Thanks, my dear editor. So he opened up pages out of the atlas, and we came to this image. He says, "This is my favorite." And of course, it's pretty striking. She's considered America, the Indian queen. And you can see up in the right corner are these putis carrying a ribbon that says America. They're introducing this whole narrative, which, of course, the native people didn't know that they were being captured this way. And she's standing tall and defiant and wearing a tobacco leaf skirt and a feathered headdress. And then mostly when I went every few years, I met with Don Kennan, who was the head historian at the U.S. Capitol Historical Society. And he was a great support for me. When I didn't know anything, he treated me like an equal. And yeah, he gave me the courage to go on and asked me to write an article for their magazine, The Capitol Dome. And I ended up writing 2 articles for them. It took me 2 years to write one article, but it got me started. Oops. No. Okay. Thomas Crawford was chosen as the sculptor for the statue. This is a beautiful line drawing. I think one of his colleagues at the Art Institute drew this. He was a New Yorker living in Rome, and he was doing other commissions for the Capitol. And as a student of Greek and Roman mythology, he understood and stated, I'm going to have John read this. Would you read this? Yeah, come closer.
Okay. So quotation, Crawford said, "A country puts its dreams, its ideals into symbols, whether a flag, a piece of ground, or a monument. These people love these symbols and will fight for them and even die for them." But in the second quote, "But the design must resolve itself with the question, will the people understand it? Because many people back then were illiterate, and so they relied on nonverbal cues to decide whether something was meaningful or not."
Images, yeah. Crawford married Louisa Ward, who was the sister of Julia Ward Howe, a renowned poet and author. Some of you, I'm sure, know of her. She wrote Battle Hymn of the Republic and the Mother's Day Proclamation, which is why we have Mother's Day. Crawford was an expert in carving into marble details. If you look closely, you see all these roses, delicately carved roses, and the folds of her clothes. And that's quite an art. And the statue itself has delineations on her of her feathers on the eagle feather headdress that are very detailed. That was his expertise. And I came to the conclusion that seeing his wife every day, he probably used her face as a model. What do you think? Don't they look pretty close? Well, the nose is, yeah. So the architect of the Capitol at the time was Thomas Eustace Walters from 1851 to 1865. And because of the policies of the time of manifest destiny and westward expansion, the Capitol was too small and they needed to create extensions for the Senate and the House wings. And then because of that, they needed a larger, they had a dome, but they needed one that would be larger than what it was to balance it out. So he conceived of a colossal statue as a figurehead and said she should be a goddess, not a god. And the Latin root of liberty is libertas, which is feminine, and she must be represented as feminine. He ended up labeling her on, he did some beautiful architectural drawings, which you can see on the right, one of them. He labeled her the goddess of freedom, but then in his annual report in 1862, he named her the Statue of Freedom. One of the commissioners was Montgomery Meigs. There were two Capitol commissioners, and Meigs was the chief engineer, and he had worked on the aqueducts of Washington, D.C. before that. And so he really was the man responsible for bringing water into D.C. And later, they didn't have running water at the Capitol. He brought it into the Capitol. He said, oh, John, here.
Yeah, so in a letter to Thomas Crawford, he said, "We have too many Washingtons. We have American impediment. Victories and liberties are rather pagan emblems, but a liberty, I fear, is the best that we can get. But a statue of some kind it must be."
In June 20th, 1855, Crawford sent his first drawing on the left. He called it "The Freedom Triumphant in War and Peace," a classical goddess balancing symbols of war and peace, the Athenian olive branch, and a sword and shield in the other hand. But it wasn't quite strong enough of an image. for the commissioners. So he tried again with his second design, which he called Armed Liberty in 1856. Oh, I think it was January. Yeah. And she was crowned with a Phrygian cap, known as a Liberty cap, worn by both American and French revolutionaries and associated with the abolitionist imagery. Crawford added a pedestal with 𝘓𝘡 𝘓𝘢𝘏 on the base. So she held a sheathed sword in her right hand pointed down, symbolizing the cessation of hostilities, and in her left hand, she held a shield with 13 stripes and 13 stars to represent the original states and the Constitution. Let's see. Let's go to the next slide. Now, Jefferson Davis was the other commissioners, if you can believe it. He was the Secretary of War at the time, and being a proponent of westward expansion, he stated that liberty cannot always be preserved by peaceful means. And he objected to that second design, the Liberty cap, mostly. He said it was inappropriate for a country whose labor economy depended on slavery, that Americans were born free. Of course, he was a slave owner. When he was a cadet at West Point in 1827, he drew this head of Minerva. And so he suggested that armed liberty wear a helmet to signify her victory over tyranny, and recommended that freedom be transformed into a warrior. Of course, he left his position at the Capitol, and in 1861 became the only president of the Confederacy. Now, I kept searching for the native influence on the her headpiece. So I found this man chief, 𝘠𝘠𝘦 𝘓𝘠𝘪𝘡, who in 1822, along with other Pawnees, visited the Great White Father. And they were gifted with do you see it on the right, his a peace medallion. Oops, what happened? Oops, there we go. Okay. So he's wearing a peace medallion, and he's from a buffalo culture, so he's wearing a buffalo robe with the curly fur on the edge, which the statue also has fringe like that. And Meigs, the commissioner, recommended to Crawford that he search in Rome. There were for the volumes of these books in the libraries of Rome. So I believe this was the image that influenced him. It was also the image that was put on the Department of Interior report of 1822. So here's the final design of her. She's called Armed Liberty, but the commissioner Meigs and Crawford in their letters were calling her America. Her helmet is encircled with 9 5-pointed stars and a crest of an eagle's head, feathers, and talons. Her right hand rests on the hilt of a sheathed sword, her left hand on a laurel wreath of victory, and her shield has 13 stripes for the original 13 colonies turned 13 states. And she's got a US on the brooch, which I think relates to is influenced by the peace medallions. Let's see, next is, oh, here we go. I just found this image a few months ago. It's just a beautiful image. But Lincoln, who was president at the time, was not at the ceremony on December 2nd, 1863, when she was raised to the top of the dome. However, he used her representation as a muse of history in this wartime 1864 Union Party campaign poster. He was reportedly said, if the people see the Capitol going on, it is a sign we intend the Union to go on. Now, I've been in touch with one of the historians at the Capitol, and he clued me in to the real reason the Capitol kept being built in the middle of wartime, and Rosemary's going to tell that story, right, Rosemary?
Yeah, we stumbled upon this story just recently. There's not a lot, but there's some new material in this book that has been Katya's effort for 3 decades, but we have some very new info. The story just keeps growing. And what happened is that all of the capital work ceased when the Civil War began. And so at one point, evidently the company, the construction company that was building the dome had piled up all of the framework for the dome on the grounds, and the Capitol, the Washington, D.C. back then was not the big city it is today. It was kind of rural in parts of it, and during the war, there were cattle grazing all around the Capitol, and what was happening is the cattle was pissing on their steel work, and it was beginning to deteriorate or get affected by all of this activity by the cows. So they made a big plea that we've got to put up the framework of the dome, because all of it's sitting there and it's going to be worthless if we don't use it and put the framework up. So because of the cows roaming around the grounds, that is the reason actually that the dome construction continued. I think they had an act in Congress or something where they said, yes, you can go ahead and finish the dome. So it's kind of an interesting story.
Thanks, Rosemary. Now,
Go back.
no, I'm gonna go back so 2 weeks ago, I went to a conference at this hotel just 15 minutes from my house, the Sonoma Valley Authors Festival, and I wanted to see Doris Kearns Goodwin. I met her there a few years ago, and I wanted to see if she'd write a review of my book. And she said she's too busy. Her publishers have her on a writing schedule, but she would write a review when it goes on Amazon. So anyway, I got this picture of her, but since then, John and I have been reading her book on Lincoln every night. I was trying to figure out this poster. It says Union nomination. I was trying to figure out what that meant. So here, John, tell.
Okay, so as you know, Lincoln ran as a Republican in the first election of 1860, but by the time 1864 had come along, the Union Army was experiencing devastating losses, and a lot of people were just totally opposed to the Republican Party. And so Lincoln, in an act of brilliant genius, changed the name and created a new party called the Union Party, which is a temporary political coalition for the purpose of winning the presidential election. And it was not a new party. It was the Republican Party rebranded and expanded to attract a broader coalition of voters beyond the traditional Republican base. And its specific purposes were to unite all the pro-war voters under a single banner, and also to distance Lincoln from the regular Republican Party label, because many of the radical Republicans were deeply unhappy with Lincoln, and then also to present the election as a referendum on national unity. And so this poster has the Union nomination, but there right in the center is the Statue of Freedom, as a symbol of union and reunification.
And his running mate is Andrew Johnson from Tennessee.
Right.
So northerner and southerner. Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, 9 months before the statue went up. On the left, this image may or may not be Philip Reed, but yeah, we're not sure. But Philip Reed was responsible for the genius of casting the statue. He worked out many of the technical problems. And he's the only known enslaved man known by name at the time. Well, he would have been a free man by the time the statue went up, actually. And the enslaved men and the free men that built the Capitol had not been honored until they built the Capitol Visitor Center, which I'm going to talk about later, which was designed to put the original plaster model in the center of it. And they named the center Emancipation Hall to honor the slaves who built the Capitol. Let's see. There. Okay. So Walt Whitman was around the Capitol at the time, and he worked as a volunteer nurse, and he helped the Union. There was a Union military hospital underneath the Capitol dome, because that's the only place they had for wounded soldiers. And he helped to rebandage them, and he helped them write letters home. And I imagine he helped write them on this. There were these letterheads and envelopes with the statue holding a flag on it. But it was written that he said, John, read that.
Okay, so these are a couple quotations from Walt Whitman. The first, he said, "Ever as I look, especially when near, the dome is a beauty, large and bold." And then the second one, I believe in a letter to a friend, he said, "We are soon to see a thing accomplished here, which I have often exercised my mind about, namely, the putting of the statue away up there on the top of the dome of the Capitol."
Nice. Okay. I only found this, well, actually Rosemary found this, Frank's Illustrated newsletter a few months ago. And it was put out December 1857, a month after the sculptor's untimely death. And it ran a front page article announcing his death. And this is an original line drawing of the statue, which I had never seen before. It's an interesting story. And Crawford was buried in the Ward family's unmarked underground vault in New York at the Brooklyn's Greenwood Cemetery, but his gravesite was never given a headstone. And I'm going to let Rosemary chime in here because she did a lot of the phone calls and research around this.
Yeah, when I called them the Greenwood Cemetery, which I knew nothing about, when I called them, it's a very famous historic cemetery in New York. And so when I talked to the people there, they were saying that, well, in his obituaries in the paper when he died, they were talking about how they were going to plan to put a wonderful memorial up for him. And it's ironic, he actually did a lot of tombstones for a lot of notable people that were quite exquisite. And what happened is the whole idea of doing a headstone for him fell through the cracks. I guess, whatever you want to call that, a pun or whatever. But anyway, nothing ever was done. And so we talked about maybe in connection with the book, we could get some kind of movement going to get him a headstone, since he did so many headstones himself. And actually, Katya was talking with them recently and found out that what they're planning to do is put a replica of one of his sculptures, which is Babes in the Wood. It's
on the right.
it's a
Yeah.
famous, yeah, that's the image on the right there. It's a famous fairy tale about a brother and sister who wander into the woods and they end up dying in each other's arms. It's kind of a macabre story. But anyway, he did that sculpture of it, and they're planning on putting that statue, a replica of that statue at his grave site, just so, and then I don't know if they'll use any documentation about what it represents. But anyway, it looks like he's finally going to get his own headstone. So that's that story.
Thank you. So in 2012, when I had my fellowship, I went to the U.S. Postal Museum, which is 2 blocks from the Capitol, because this stamp, I was looking for something about the stamp, and here was a whole exhibit about it. And so I had called ahead and to meet with the curator, who is Daniel Piazza. He was curator of Philately. Now he's the head curator of the whole museum. But I asked him if he knew why they put America on the stamp, and he didn't know. But I love the exhibit. Every stamp tells a story.
What year was that stamp, Katya? It
Oh,
was the early 1900s,
It's
wasn't it?
1923.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah, there it is.
yeah, freedom has appeared as the face of the nation many times, not enough. But yeah, here it is on the right. And then on the left is a National Capital Sesquicentennial, 1800 to 1950. It's a 3 cents, yeah, 3-cent stamp. And then recently in 2018, they did this series, a multicolor series of 1, 2, and 5-cent stamps. And I have a lot of them.
I think those were dollar stamps, actually.
Yeah, did I say cent? Yeah, they're
Yeah.
dollars. And this is a beautiful gold foil note, which I bought a few. These are private mints did these, and the silver coin and silver bar, and they did a beautiful job. Now, this woman, Morna Simeone, I found out about in 1993 because she did a lot of work to get the statue seen, and she inspired me. Unfortunately, she passed away in 1992, so I didn't get to meet her.
Right. And who was she?
Morna Simeone was a Hawaiian native healer, and she traveled to Washington, D.C. to meet with her Hawaiian senators. She sat on the lawn of the Capitol one day when she was visiting, and she made a spiritual connection with the statue, very strong, like myself, that motivated her to spend years to get the statue seen. One of the things she did was in 1989, she had a petition put through the Hawaiian state legislature to recognize the statue as a symbol of world peace and freedom. And that passed. So Hawaii recognizes the statue. And she also found out that the original plaster model was in pieces at the Smithsonian. And she petitioned to be able to raise money to put it back together again. And she was successful. And then that was put back together in 1992. And then her Hawaiian congressman helped to create this. On the right is the Capitol Visitor Center, and it's underground before you enter the Capitol for a tour. But they set it up so that you could finally see her three-dimensionally when you walk up the stairs on either side, because on the Capitol Dome, the bronze one, she's not very recognizable. On the left, I think that was 1995, I did get to meet two of the Hawaiian men who helped Morna Simeone raise funds to put this particular statue together again. So they were very proud of that effort.
Who were they?
Well, one is Haleakala, who was a Hawaiian spiritual teacher. The other man was a Hawaiian businessman, and I don't know his name. And here, remember in January 2021, there was a need for a lot of National Guard to guard the Capitol because of what was going on. So they were deployed to the Washington area, and they all slept in the Capitol Visitor Center at the feet of the goddess, I say, surrounding her. Now, being an artist myself, I've always loved the art of the statue and honored the people who do art about the statue. And I found out about Steve Simon. He painted this, and actually John and I went to Sedona. We met him, and he gave me this painting, which I have behind me. And he did a documentary of the statue. Here, John, would you read this?
Okay, so there's a quotation. So they said, crowning the Capitol building dome stands perhaps America's most prominently placed work of art. Yet she goes relatively unnoticed by most, and her extraordinary history and symbolism are known by fewer still.
And then on the left, I met a Tanka painter, Tibetan Tanka painter in Santa Fe, where I was living. And we did a trade, actually. I asked him to paint an image of her, and he did this absolutely beautiful drawing. And I asked him what it meant, and he said,
so this is from Lama Gourmet. He said, the Statue of Freedom is standing on the world so that it can become free. The robes are traditional colors. There are no stains, and she has no problems of the ego. The green dress has the 7 precious jewels designs, bringing wealth for all beings. The white shirt underneath stands for a peaceful world.
Beautiful, huh? So in 1993, I made a pendant out of the statue, which I sent one to the First Lady, Hillary Clinton, and I sent one to Barbara Blannon, the curator, and she wore it at the ceremony in 1993 when they put the statue back up on the Capitol Dome. And on the right there is my 70th birthday. My daughter had this cake made with the image of the statue on it. Now, the top image, I have to credit someone in this, one of the women in the writers group clued me in that the bicycle, what's it called? It's the playing deck, the Ace of Spades has an image of the statue in it, which I didn't know about. And now I've been collecting these playing decks with the statue's image on the cover and the ace of spades. So I took that nice picture of me pretending to play cards. So here she is, all refurbished, ready to go back on the dome in October of 1993. And here I am announcing that I am going to have a book called The Lady on the Dome, America's Most Visible Yet Invisible Monument, as a way to get the statue seen and keep freedom alive. So we will keep you posted about that. How do I get out of here? There. Oops.
You click the end sharing.
Let's
Up
see.
there, yeah.
And share.
Stop share, the red. Stop share.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Oh,
well,
good.
thank you very much, Katya. I'll open the floor for questions, comments, observations, commentary. Remember to unmute yourselves.
Bert, hi.
Hi, yeah, just a comment. One of the things you mentioned evoked memories because you mentioned a no headstone for him in. I'm just looking at my notes in the Greenwood Cemetery.
Yeah,
I lived a block when I was a teenager. I lived a block from the Greenwood Cemetery,
really?
and it's
Oh.
in Brooklyn. And my friends and I, sometimes family, we would use it as a park. We'd go out and just wander around because, there are lots of trees and grass and whatever is sort of in the middle of a residential area, middle class residential area. At least it was then in Brooklyn. It's a long time ago. And I just thought I'd toss that out. Evoke, how one set of memories evokes another set of memories.
Well, cemeteries have so much history in them, right?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. And Greenwood Cemetery goes way back too. Yeah, they're centuries ago. Yeah, I assume, and I don't know its history, but I'm guessing that when it was first set up, a lot of a lot of that area in what's now Brooklyn had not really been built up, was still probably somewhat rural.
I think it's a really large cemetery.
It is. It's huge.
Yeah. Megan, hi. We had a month ago, we had a women's history conference in Sacramento, and I met Megan there.
Yeah,
She's got a great project.
thank you for the invite. This was really great. I'm glad I got to attend. I actually had a question for you, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Could you speak more to kind of just some of the indigenous perspectives that you've collected along the way in your research on this? What, especially Native women, what are their perspectives on the statue?
Well, a lot of the images of men and women were taken without their knowledge, so they're not aware of it, like most Americans, they're not aware of it. But I had this amazing thing happen at the beginning of COVID when I guess PBS put out a short documentary and 5-minute documentary, and they called the statue Sky Woman. And this Mohawk clan mother saw the documentary and she was upset. She said they didn't consult with me who the statue was. And so she talked to her friend, Sally Roche Wagner, who was a historian and who I also knew. She lived in upstate New York. And she said, what am I supposed to do? Anyway, Sally introduced us. And as a result, we've been meeting regularly to discuss that whole issue. We have a lot of recorded Zoom meetings from her, and she invited me to a Mother of Nations gathering she had up in she's in upstate New York at the border, the US-Canadian border. So she's very interested in helping evolve the Native perspective on this. And she is actually starting a project based on my research called Finding America. But I could talk on about that. And they were recently invited, 7 of them were invited to come to Berkeley to speak because people are wanting to know what the Iroquois women
at the annual Pioneers Conference.
Yeah. So we took them out to lunch and had a nice gathering. But I was invited up to their ceremony, and Gloria Steinem was there, and Lorraine Powell Jobs was there. What's his name? Who was her husband? Blanking.
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs. She was married to Steve Jobs, so she has a huge foundation. And who else was there? Oh, Marissa Tomei. Yeah. So it was, we have a nice connection now. But most people don't know about the statue. Native people don't know about the statue. So I'm the ambassador. If you want to join me, well, we can talk more about it.
I would love to. You're leading the way, absolutely. I think you're doing great work, so thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you know about this group now, this foundation. Why don't you just mention what is your history that you've been writing or working on?
Yeah, sure. Not to take the torch away from you, but so I'm currently in my master's for museum studies through Johns Hopkins. I live in the Bay Area. My program is the rest of it is remote, thankfully. I do have to work full time in this area. But so I'm doing my master's in museum studies. I'm working towards my thesis right now. And what I presented at the conference where we met, my poster was exploring national identity and memory through public history. So how those ideas are explored and preserved in museums, historic sites, and more broad memory. So things that you kind of brought up in your presentation today as well, in coinage, in stamps, and then other things like roadside markers, memorial highways, things like that. Things that are more accessible to the broader American public. So things or places and settings where you're able to kind of get your hands on history, but you might not realize what you're doing. So
that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
We're going to have some long talks.
Exactly.
Rosemary,
I just wanted to say that it was a great presentation, Katya. I want to point out to everyone who hasn't yet seen your book that there are so many more stories in the book. There's just an incredible wealth of anecdotes and development of personalities. I mean, she didn't even touch on this whole friendship between Crawford and Sumner, who was a leading abolitionist, and that's an incredible story. I mean, Crawford's life is very well documented in the book, and then there's just many other little side trips the book takes that really enlarges on the story. So she's whetted your appetite with this presentation. There's just tons more in the book.
It's hard to decide what to put in a presentation.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyone else have a comment?
Following up on on what was just said. What I the term cultural appropriation is overused, I think, somewhat these days, but this is just be over the top, literally, uh, taking an image of a people and the women of a conquered people, and then using it as your symbol for freedom.
Yeah.
Do you get people saying? I would think if you asked someone, one of your native contacts, they might say it makes your head spin.
Well, yeah, that's why I was contacted by her, and we have an ongoing conversation. But, I'm glad you brought that up. But most people, since they don't even know the statue, they don't know, probably this whole back history has been hidden for that reason. It's a huge.
I have one other thing to say that one of the things that in her research in some of her earlier drafts, it was kind of controversial about how much influence the Iroquois Confederation had on Benjamin Franklin and the founding fathers, because they have a lot of things in their bringing together the six nations. A lot of the things that they wrote down are in part of our founding fathers' major points. And it was really interesting to me that when I just watched the first episode so far, but Burns's latest series on the American Revolution, his first episode goes totally into that whole bit of history, which really gives it validation, I think, about the influence the native native people had on our own Constitution. And I was really glad to see that he made that a big part of the first episode. I don't know if you watched that, Katya, but the first episode of Burns's American.
I need to watch it. Yeah.
Yeah, because and it's in your book. So more people hear about this, about our connection to the Native people, and the Native people realizing that some of the best parts of our Constitution come from them, it might be more of a healing thing. I don't know.
It's a big story, and I think that's probably why the statue isn't really seen properly, is because people don't know how to see it, and it brings up cultural appropriation, it brings up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm just letting this clan mother lead the way for this next story about finding America, because I think that's why she's been so actively wanting to put something together so that it's from her perspective, a native perspective. But, it'll take a lot to put together, because I've run out of juice to keep putting these stories together. I'm almost 80.
No more additions at this point. We have to draw
This
the
is
line.
it.
Well, there's never an end to it, but sometime you have to come to a point where you say enough is enough already, but there's never an end.
Right.
Right. You just keep going deeper into the story.
It's ironic that Jefferson Davis's anathema towards the cap, the slave cap, the name of which escapes me right now.
Phrygian cap.
Phrygian
Yeah,
cap.
yeah. I mean, that goes all the way back to Roman times, and it represented freedom from slavery, and that what replaced it was Indian imagery. It's kind of ironic. And also, when the statue was being dedicated, just a little distance away in Richmond was Jefferson Davis was heading up the Confederacy. And one of the little stories in the book that I think I stumbled upon that is that the Great Seal of the Confederacy States
Yeah.
uses as its image this statue of George Washington. It's the top of the statue. There's a whole bunch of other statues around the bottom, but that monument happened to be designed by Thomas Crawford, who was very much on the side of the abolitionists, and that his statue of George Washington would end up on the Great Seal of the Confederacy is just one of those other crazy stories from the past. So we have that image in the book.
Yeah.
When will this be published, and who's going to publish it?
There's a company called Amplify Publishing out of Herndon, Virginia, near the Capitol. They're going to publish it as soon as we get all the images. There are a lot of historic images. We're trying to get the best quality, and that should be done very soon. So I say, where's my card here? It says summer 2026 release. So we're planning
August 30th.
Congratulations.
this summer. I mean, I wanted it by the 4th of July 2026, but I don't know if we'll make it, but we'll have to let you all know.
Yeah.
And, if anyone's really interested, let me know. I'll send you a few chapters to get started, and you can start thinking about a review that goes on Amazon.
I would be curious to know, with this astute group here, what you think of the title and subtitle of the book. Do you have any opinions or thoughts about that?
I like it. But
It's good.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
so far, so good.
Could you remind us of what it's turned out to be? Because I remember it used to be something different.
It used to be Lady Freedom, Heart of a Nation. Now it's The Lady on the Dome, America's most visible yet invisible monument.
I like it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
I like it too. I think it introduces everything you're trying to talk about.
Good.
Very good.
Yeah, I was sure about the title, the subtitle. I thought maybe it was too long, but thank you for your feedback. I don't want to change one more thing.
No.
Stop.
Anyway, thank you all.